The 2024 edition of the Africa Business Forum, hosted in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, invited the public and private sector to have an open dialogue about Africa's efforts to accelerate the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. On top of the agenda is boosting Africa's transformation through education, technology, and innovation. CNBC Africa's Fifi Peters spoke to Suraj Shah, lead of strategic partnership at MasterCard Foundation, about the role of education technology in driving Africa's transformation.
If you look at it, we look at the skills that are coming out for the youth as they attend universities, tertiary institutions, secondary and primary schools. And you look at, are they getting the right skills? Are our education systems moved on to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of work and job markets? And it is very difficult to start changing and keep on altering the pedagogy systems. It is much easier to introduce locally bred edtech ecosystems that add on the skills that nurture more interest in STEM, in other science subjects. And by learning these skills themselves is already a step forward in these fields. So we kind of foster local edtech ecosystems where everyone comes together, the government, the edtech communities, the users, the parents, the teachers, the youth's voice, so that we make sure no one's left behind.
And given the diversity of the contexts and the challenges, of course, that African countries are facing right now, what are some of the key considerations for implementing effective edtech solutions that can cater to the needs of various communities?
So one is, as I mentioned, at MasterCard Foundation, we believe in the representation of African partners, African-led partners. 75% is our target. We're well on the way. And so at the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning that I represent, we nurture local edtech ecosystems. Why? First of all, the local entrepreneurs understand the challenges in access to education, access to technology, and come up with really innovative ideas to break those barriers. Locally led edtech ecosystems are also cost-effective. They create a whole environment where there's more confidence in something that has been created for them in languages that are understood, in formats that have been kind of easily developed. But we also look at the policy and the regulatory piece. As we do this, how do we make sure that the policy enables local-driven edtech ecosystems? We connect the edtech community with the government so as to create the market. The government needs to see these as solutions that bridge the gaps that they see, and they create the market to sort of make sure that all of them work in tandem. Outside of that, we're looking at also, how do the policies work for improving education? We've learned our lessons in COVID. How do governments step out and say, we need to include technology such that if learning ever comes to a stop, that we can continue with technology in a more hybrid fashion of work.
So such partnerships then, you'd say, are critical at this juncture?
Absolutely, yes. So currently we partner with the World Bank, and we're working with 12 countries across Africa and the Sahel region on configuring what will it take. Everyone's understood that there needs to be resilience into the system to withstand such shocks. What will it take? And the first stop is always policy. Let's look at the policy. Does it enable a mainstream of hybrid model? And then comes technology, as well as the resource planning, then implementation. So it's a long-term process, but it needs to start at some point, because all governments are now wanting to sort of learn their lessons and want to move forward with more resilient pedagogy systems.
Suraj, perhaps we'll just speak then about the importance of appropriate policies in ensuring that the education systems of the continent do realize their absolute potential, of course, of being transformative and innovative.
Yeah. So one of the things is that government needs to governments that we work with need to realize where are the gaps? Can they fill those gaps in education outcomes? Mostly they're coming around to say, we need now technology interventions to fill these gaps. But they also come and say, there's so much out there that we're not sure what exactly works and doesn't work. So we did do this in a kind of 3 different ways. One is with those governments, we work with creating a local edtech ecosystem that kind of helps bridge those gaps, as well as look at the policies, and the policies cover things like infrastructure. How fast can we change the policy to adapt more stakeholder engagement in the governance of edtech ecosystems? Usually, up to now, governments in Africa were trying to do this alone. Now we kind of come to where stakeholder management is very important. Who are all your relevant partners that come together to create that ecosystem? And the third one is data. Governments still don't have the relevant, timely, quality data to make strategic decisions. And that also affects the stakeholders that work in the same field. So we're working with our partner ADEA with 30 countries in the next 5 years to kind of create a mechanism to collect the right relevant quality data so that they can make the informed decisions. Everyone else can kind of have a strategy based on that data. What is working, what is rapidly changing, and how do we quickly adopt? Technology can adopt to newer ways of doing things, but we need that data. And this is where I think governments also learn from each other. We have what I call the ministerial forums. We've done 2 already, where ministers come together and talk about their progression or their challenges learned in adopting technology and how not to do things right or what works. And in similar fashion, we've got another EdTech conference coming up in July this year in Abuja, where we'll have over 150 African EdTech ecosystems, innovative ecosystems, displaying their kind of the solutions that work. As well as a ministerial forum with at least maybe 20 ministers to come talk about how they're progressing in the adoption of technology, how teachers getting trained, what is that impact that they're seeing with the advent of technology in education systems.
And perhaps just to pick up on the point, to say that you can't talk about making the education system resilient right now using technology and innovation without talking about artificial intelligence. Just your approach to using artificial intelligence in how you're addressing a lot of the educational needs.
Yeah. So as you see, AI doesn't always stand on its own. It is so implied in almost every technology solution right now. I can quote you at least 3 or 4 fantastic examples in Kenya of edtech companies that use AI to keep coming back to the areas of learning that workers may be weak on, teachers, emphasize teachers kind of emphasis on what seems to not work at work. So AI is implied now in all of the technology that we support, especially the edtech solutions, because a lot of that data goes out. They make kind of big decisions made based on that data, and that kind of goes back into improving their solution, their coverage, their approach, their strategies.
The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa also focusing on the importance of education right now. You would know that it is the 4th Sustainable Development Goal of the UN, and for some reason right now all policymakers believe it is central to the discussion of advancing Africa. I will get into the summary of the AU meetings in just a short while, but I've got a very important man standing here. In fact, he has given us around 5 minutes just before he goes and attends a bilateral with one of the private sector players who are here. But I am talking about Mr. Claver Gateta, of course, who is the Executive Secretary General for the UN Commission for Africa, who joins me now. So once again, thanks so much for your time. We have been having a interesting and invigorating discussion around the role of education right now in transforming the African continent. You had some really interesting insights about the importance of ensuring that learners come out with the skills that are required for industry right now. That has been quite a major challenge for the continent, the issue of the skills gap. What are you saying about how that can better be addressed, sir?
No, thank you very much. We are holding this Africa Business Forum on the sidelines of the African Union Summit, and also in line with the theme of the African Union, which is education. But here we are also talking about the implementation of the implementation of the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, and also the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is the Marshall Plan that is going to develop the continent. And in order to develop industries, develop agriculture, develop the services sector, do the manufacturing, do everything, it requires skills. It requires education. And for this cannot happen without science, technology, and innovations that are going to drive it. They are not only enablers, but they are also directly contributing to the economic development. And that's why you had this debate of the people who are really in science, who are in technology, who understand what kind of innovations are needed for Africa to leapfrog and grow as fast as possible to benefit all the countries. That's why we are talking about really what is happening here. How do we align our education system to what is needed for the Africans' development? And we are very happy that this has really been very useful.
One of the key events that have taken place so far this morning at the forum, sir, is the signing of the MOU between yourselves as UNECA as well as Google. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that and what you're hoping to achieve?
Yes, Google has been one of the top participants in the technology world. And we as Africa, we need to develop in terms of technology by the infrastructure itself, the skills that we need, and also we need artificial intelligence. We need all the other applications that are going to help us in terms of leapfrogging. And the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa wants to partner with them so that we can work on the whole continent to make sure that we can apply these kind of technologies, these kind of skills development, and also the training that is required for Africa to also not lag behind. Right now, globally, there are 1.6 billion people who are not connected. As we try to connect the different schools, the different countries, and also the different institutions, we want to make sure that at the end of the day, we also provide the skills that we need in order to make sure that we are not lagging behind in the global and benefiting from the global development.